Welcome everyone to our webinar for Plan Change 21 on Central City Noise. My name is Hannah Ballantyne, your host for this webinar. A bit of an agenda. First, I'll introduce the team behind the screen and let you know how you can participate during the session. Then I'll hand over to our presenters who will run you through a very brief overview of the project. What we're going to be covering includes what PC21 is and why we're proposing a change, an explanation of some of the noise-related jargon and how Council measures noise, the current district plan and what we're proposing to change, and a timeline and some next steps. So today you'll be hearing from Holly Gardner, a Senior Policy Planner who's our subject matter expert, and Darren Bridget, Team Leader for City Planning. We also have Aviva working hard behind the scenes to keep the session moving smoothly. Your mics and cameras are switched off so that we can keep the session moving, but you can ask questions in the Microsoft Teams chat, which is located at the top bar menu as a speech bubble. If you're not able to use this, you can email questions to letstalk@ccc.govt.nz. If you're hard of hearing or if you're experiencing sound issues, other than my microphone not working, you can turn on live captions. Just click on the three small dots above More at the top of your Teams screen and click Turn on Live Captions near the bottom of the drop-down list. One last thing from me. Hopefully the banner came up to let you know that this session's being recorded. The recording will be shared on our YouTube channel in the next few days. You'll receive a link via email showing you how to access this recording along with a copy of the PowerPoint slides. Next, I was going to hand you over to Holly, but we actually might start with Darren to provide a comment. As some of you will know, the RMA Reform Minister put out a release today around stopping plan changes. So Darren, do you reckon you could provide some info about that?
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. Yeah, so today the Minister released a statement on plan changes, and in essence, there's been kind of changes to the reform to the RM system signalled for some time now, and as part of that, things have happened. For instance, ECAN have been advised to hit pause on updating their regional policy statement, and similarly, in the background, I guess we've been continuing with our plan change programme. We didn't know entirely how it might translate into the new reform system, but until we get to the point that we know more details, we've been carrying on. So today, the Minister has said, actually, we want you to stop doing the plan changes. And as part of that, they've said notification of new plan or regional policy statement reviews, changes or variations will be stopped. But what they have also said is that work that councillors do before notifying a plan change, that won't be stopped. And then importantly, the Minister has also signalled that there will be exemptions to the stop for things such as streamlined planning processes and intensification planning processes, such as PC14, the one that's been going on over the past good number of years in Christchurch. Now, the situation that we're at the moment is we don't know what the details are. So there will be some automatic exemptions and there will be some exemptions which are at the discretion of the Minister. And we don't know where PC21 might fall in that process, but once we know more, we will speak to Council and we will work out what to do next. Thanks, Hannah.
Oh, thank you for that. We will now hand over to Holly to start the presentation.
Thanks, Hannah. So turning to the guts of Plan Change 14, what it's all about and what the process will involve. Plan Change 21 is, as mentioned before, it's all about central city noise, and it is involving a review of the operative district plan provisions relating to noise and entertainment activities in the central city. there is a statutory process which we need to follow, and that's set out under Schedule 1 of the Resource Management Act. This slide here shows just a brief summary of that process. As you can see, we're currently shown by the red arrow in the pre-notification engagement phase. So this is about finding out what the community thinks about the work we've done to date and the options that we've put out and the preferred option. Following the close of engagement, we will then make changes to what's proposed and reviewing all the feedback that we receive. We then would go into a notification period, and what that involves is a submissions period of 20 working days. Following all of that, we then have a further submissions period and a hearing, and we'd then get a recommendation report, and council then makes a decision on the plan change. The latter part would be at this stage looking towards next year, 2026. And then plan change would be becoming operative later next year. Big question that's come up a wee bit is why we're proposing this plan change. We've had a lot of new residents move into the central city in recent years, and that resident activity is a great thing for the vibrancy of the city. But we are also finding that tensions have arisen in areas where there's a wide range of uses, including music venues as well. There is currently an area in existing category 1, that's the noisy or loudest part of the city, and that area has been developed for other uses over the years, and entertainment activities we've found have largely gone elsewhere. In 2023, we did a survey to find out what people thought about life in the central city and noise issues, and we found that the majority of people thought that central city living goes hand in hand with increased noise levels, and were really keen to see us support a vibrant central city. Another part of this plan change is supporting residents moving into the central city and encouraging the nightlife to develop in key locations across the city. This slide here is just showing a more specific timeline of where we're at so far. You'll note here that our informal engagement period is closing on the 3rd of August. That's been extended by a week. It was previously the 27th of July. Turning now to some key terms that we'll refer to throughout this presentation and is also referred to across the engagement materials that we've put out on the website. Decibels is the measure of how loud a sound is. The table on the right there shows some examples of how loud specific noises might be. That includes city traffic, which is at 85 decibels. In the district plan, we measure noise limits in 2 ways. LAEQ is an average of how loud the noise environment is across a time period. In the district plan, that's usually a 15-minute period. That means that in that window, we take an average, and that is then compared to what the noise limits are in the plan to determine if something or an activity complies. The LA max is a maximum noise limit for a period of time, a moment in time, and that's the maximum how loud a sound can be. Key to note is that cities are noisy places. Generally in the city, the noise doesn't fall below 50 decibels and is often 60 decibels, both during the day and at night time. That's made up of the noise you generally hear when you're walking down the street. So that's your traffic noise, that's music in the environment, that's the other sort of comings and goings activities that form that background environment that you hear as you're moving through the city and carrying out your activities. Other terms we refer to through this presentation are relating to noise insulation types. There's 2 different ways of insulating buildings that we refer to. The first is an outside to inside noise reduction. The picture on the top right there is demonstrating what this looks like. This methods is specifying a level at which noise needs to be reduced by, and how a building needs to be insulated to reduce that noise. For example, the plan might say you need to reduce your noise from outside to inside by 30 decibels, and therefore you would need your external walls to be a certain thickness, for example, and having certain materials in them to provide that reduction. The other method we use is a target noise level. This is most commonly used in situations where we know where the noise is coming from, and often in cases where that noise is constant. A good example is for traffic noise. In that case, we might say the maximum level of noise from traffic that you can experience in that house cannot exceed 40 decibels, and then you need to insulate accordingly. Another key concept or term to be aware of is where we measure noise from. We don't measure noise from the source itself, so we don't measure from inside a music venue, for example, or right at the boundary of a music venue. We measure noise from where the noise is received. So that means that if there is a music venue and then there's a residential premises across the road, like in this picture on the slide here, we would be measuring it at the property boundary from the residential address across the road. This allows for things like distance and insulation in both buildings, as well as any buildings in between those two buildings to be taken into account, because all of those things factor into actually reducing noise before it reaches that property where the noise is received. Looking ahead to the next part of our presentation, this slide is showing a map of what the current district plan does and how it approaches noise in the central city. Key to note here is we have 2 insulation overlays for the stadium. That is an inner noise insulation area and an outer noise insulation area. The inner one is the blue, the outer one is that sort of green dotted line around the stadium area. The rules for the stadium are set via a designation process, and they came into the district plan in 2022. Those rules set limits for how loud events at the stadium can be, and there's also a set number of events that can be held each year for the stadium. Because those rules were reviewed in 2022 and have been in since 2022, we are not looking to change those rules in any way. We're not looking to change the noise limits or the number of events that can be held or the insulation settings for stadium-related noise. That is all outside the scope of this plan change. The loudest noise limit area currently is the Category 1 area, which is the green small area on the map. And the purple area is sort of the second loudest limit, and that's the Category 2 area. Within the 4 avenues, if you're not in any of those areas, there is Category 3, which is the lowest noise limit in our current district plan for the central city. That is also expressed in this table, which shows what those noise limits are. Key here is the Category 1 area, which is 60 decibels, our average 15-minute average all day. Category 2 is 60, but from 7 a.m. to 1 a.m., 50 from 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. And Victoria Street has a lower limit again of 55, 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. and 50, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. Category 3 has a 55 during the day and 45 at night time. I mentioned briefly before, we also have insulation requirements across the central city in our current district plan. Those vary depending on which category you're in. The insulation requirements for categories 1, 2 and 3 have all been in our district plan since 2015. And as I mentioned previously, the stadium noise insulation requirements have been in since 2022. This slide here is showing the other noise insulation requirements. One thing to note here is we also have insulation requirements for road noise. That means that if you're a noise sensitive activity such as a residential dwelling and you're within 40 metres of an arterial main distributor or local distributor road, there are some noise insulation requirements for you. You might be wondering what kind of roads those are. What does that mean? Examples include Manchester Street, Colombo Street, St Asaph Street, and the 4 avenues as well. So if you're in those areas, you would need to insulate for road noise. Turning now to our proposed plan change, what we're looking to do. This map here is showing the preferred option, which if you've seen on our website, you would have seen this pop up. The key changes we're looking to make relate to changes to the spatial areas for categories 1, 2, and 3 in some cases. Category 1, I'll flip back to our existing plan. Category 1 in our current plan is this green area. And in our preferred option, we're looking to expand that area to the orange area would now be category 1. So that includes the existing category 1 area and then all of the what was category 2, as well as the area within the stadium that would apply noise limits to other activities that are not the stadium itself. We would then look to expand the category 2 areas. And in our current plan, that is just the purple area, which in our preferred option would become category 1. And category 3 would remain those other areas that's in that yellow colour there. The key thing to note here with these areas is that in developing our plan change, we looked at where insulation is currently required for noise sensitive activities. And the acoustic advice we've received has told us that our existing noise insulation limits are sufficient to provide for the increased noise limits we're proposing for entertainment activities. So therefore that, for example, with the category 2 area, that is currently our areas where insulation is required if you're in a commercial zone or I've completely lost my train of thought, in the commercial zones. And in those areas, you need insulation for your bedrooms. In category 1, you need insulation for bedrooms and other habitable spaces as well, and there's an increased level of insulation that's required. Expressing all of that in another way, this is a table showing the nighttime noise limit changes we're proposing and what those areas currently are in the existing plan. As mentioned previously, category 1 and category 2 would become the orange areas, and there we're proposing a 65 decibel limit just for entertainment activities, and there'd be no other changes for other activities in those areas. The existing limits would remain. In category 3, those are the areas which are currently commercial zones or within 75 metres of category 1 or 2. That becomes our proposed category 2, those green areas with a 60 decibel limit for entertainment activities. And category 3 areas not covered above, we would retain the 45 decibel limit for all activities. Turning to the noise insulation requirements, as I previously mentioned, we're not looking to change these. So for the orange category 1 area, we'd retain an outdoor to indoor noise reduction of 35 decibels for bedrooms and 30 for other habitable spaces. In the green category 2 area, it would remain an outdoor to indoor reduction of 30 decibels for bedrooms. And then for road noise, we're looking to not apply it in the orange and green category 1 and 2 areas because we'd already have the insulation requirements in those areas, and then change it to a target noise insulation, a target internal noise level, which would be 40 decibels for traffic noise. In all cases, we're proposing to add a mechanical ventilation requirement. The key reason for this is that if you do not have, currently in the plan, you have a choice whether you provide mechanical ventilation or not. If you don't provide it, but you do have insulation, and then on a hot day, you need to open the windows to get some fresh air, opening the windows reduces the effectiveness of that noise insulation. So we're proposing to add in a requirement that mechanical ventilation is also provided, which would then mean in summer you can have a cooler environment in your home, but you don't need to open the windows, so you still get the benefit of that sound insulation. Turning now to the costs and benefits of the preferred option that we've identified. The benefits of this option is that it provides greater flexibility for the locations for new venues to establish. It's providing increased noise limits for entertainment activities to allow for a vibrant nighttime economy. And the existing noise insulation requirements are sufficient to allow for that higher noise environment. Key costs we've identified of the options are that the cost to insulate for sensitive activities wouldn't be increasing except for the mechanical ventilation requirement. Existing noise sensitive activities, such as residential activities that were established before 2015, may be adversely affected by the increased noise from entertainment activities because they may not have that same level of insulation due to when they were constructed. And for those reasons, there are still likely to be situations where conflicts occur, where the noise limit is applied, but where the noise limit may currently be lower, in which case there'd be an increased level of noise in that area. Turning now to other options we've considered. One option we looked at was just keeping the status quo. That option is not preferred as it does not adequately support the development of music and hospitality venues in the central city. It's currently providing limited opportunities for new music and hospitality venues to establish outside the Category 1 areas. And for those reasons, we also thought that conflicts are likely to arise where music venues have established near existing noise-sensitive activities that were not required to insulate for acoustic noise. Another option we've looked at is retaining largely our current settings and the existing categories 1, 2, and 3, but adding in new areas where we've currently got clusters of existing entertainment activities and venues. This option does align best to where existing venues are. It allows for the consolidation of venues and would provide greater certainty for venues that are currently in categories 2 or 3. But similar to the option of keeping the status quo, it's not addressing the conflicts where noise sensitive activities have established. This option also provides limited opportunities for expansion and is a short-term fix. It's not future-proofed and would not allow as much capacity for venues to go in other locations in the future. Lastly, another option we looked at was to remove the categories 1, 2, and 3 and apply a city-wide regime across the 4 avenues. This option would provide the greatest flexibility for venues, but it could give rise to adverse impacts on the health and well-being of the occupants for residential activities, particularly where they were established without insulation. This option would require a greater cost for new noise-sensitive activities. For example, if a new noise-sensitive activity was established in an area that's not close to existing entertainment activities or is likely to be close to those activities in the future, in this option, the noise insulation requirement would likely exceed what they would actually need, which would make it more costly for them. This option also would not resolve the conflicts between venues and noise-sensitive activities. And that's why we haven't gone with an approach along those lines. Looking ahead to next steps following the close of our engagement period on the 3rd of August. Once we've received all of your feedback, we will be analysing that feedback and putting that into our ongoing development of the plan change, of the draft plan change. And at this stage, the plan is to seek approval to notify the plan change in late 2025, pending the further announcements and any developments in that space which were announced today. That concludes the formal part of the presentation, and we now have time for questions.
We do. So thank you all for the questions that have come through during this session as well as when you registered. Let's start. So first, Holly, I think this is for you. Have staff factored in the medical and health related information about the impact of noise at the proposed maximum decibels on A, the damage to hearing, and B, disrupted sleep?
Yes, we sure have. So the acoustic advice that we've received has taken into account the World Health Organization guidelines on noise, and that includes relating to hearing loss as well.
Thank you. Would hospitality venues be required to retrospectively apply noise insulation measures?
The short answer to that question is yes. If an existing venue did not comply with the noise limits, the proposed noise limits, then they would need to look at implementing noise mitigation measures. That could include noise or sound insulation. That could also include other things like thinking about the direction the speakers face or the volume of the music that they are playing. That can also include other things too, like active monitoring of noise limits, say through a night. But yes, if they found that the noise limits were not complied with, one measure of containing that noise would be noise insulation.
Cool. How does today's RMA announcement? I think we covered all of that, or as much as we can at this stage. Do you have anything planned to reduce the amount of bass transmitted to surrounding suburbs?
Great question. The scope of this current plan change is just the central city. So the short answer to that question is no, we're not looking at other suburbs. But in terms of bass transmission, the noise limits we are proposing have taken into account the qualities of sound, in this case, for example, music and the bass tones. Sometimes that's called special audible characteristics. So the noise limits we've set and the combinations of noise limits and insulation requirements together have considered that in setting those limits.
And the last one I've got in here, so if you've got any more, pop them in quickly. Why does the proposed plan allow for above 60 decibels for nighttime when other cities in New Zealand and across most of the Western world are less than 60 decibels for the late night?
It's a great question. The key reason for that is the acoustic advice we've received has told us that our existing noise insulation requirements in those louder areas, for example, categories 1 and 2, where the current insulation requirements is applying both to bedrooms and other habitable spaces. The advice has told us that that insulation level can provide for the 65 decibel limit in the proposed category 1 orange area. So that's why we've landed on that limit. When we looked at what noise limits might be appropriate, We also looked at I think it was 70 or 75 decibels off the top of my head. That was the loudest limit we looked at. We looked at 65, we looked at 60, and we looked at 45. You might have seen on our website, we actually have a noise combinations table, and that sets out in greater detail the costs and benefits of those limits and the corresponding noise insulation requirement that goes with it. In the case of that upper limit that we looked at, that's 70, 75 off the top of my head, the level of noise insulation that would have been required to provide for that noise limit would have the cost to do that would be would make it unviable for residential in that area. It would enable hospitality and music venues to operate largely from any type of building without needing to do much, if anything, in terms of noise mitigation. But because that limit would be so loud that it would be unviable for the noise sensitive activities, we're not proposing that limit, and instead we've landed on the 65 and 60. In both of those cases, we acknowledge that there'd be some areas where both venues and residential will need to insulate, but it's bringing both to sort of meet in the middle to find a balance where they could both coexist.
A follow-up to that one, have the council considered having a separate limit for after midnight?
Yes, and that is something we can consider further, or will be considering further as we develop the plan change, is making sure that we have those hours right. And as a part of this engagement, it's definitely the time to let us know what you think about the hours we've proposed. Currently, the settings, I will flick back to the slide of the limits we're proposing for nighttime. So currently, I didn't actually put the hours in here, but we're proposing, for example, a 65 decibels that I think off the top of my head it's from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. There is not a change from 11 p.m. for the 65 decibel average, but after 11 p.m. we're proposing a what's a decibel LA max. If you remember from one of those earlier slides I mentioned, the LA max is setting that maximum upper limit for noise for a moment in time, whereas the 65 decibels is that average across a 15-minute period. So the combination of the two would kick in and apply after 11 p.m. And if the noise across that 15-minute period, if it didn't or it exceeded the max that we've proposed, then that would result in an activity that wouldn't comply. So while we haven't set it at midnight, we have looked at that 11 p.m. as the proposed option that we've put forward. But those hours are also, like I say, something we're looking at further and will continue to develop through the plan change. So if you have further thoughts on that, definitely include that in your feedback.
Do we agree that the general public don't understand that the scale is not linear? Some explanation is required in this respect. I think we've explained it a bit, but I will go in and review that with fresh eyes. That's fair feedback. We will take that as a note. Right, that is the last of the questions that have come through. So thank you everyone for taking the time to join us. If we flick to the last slide, if you've got any feedback about the session, please contact, that is my contact details on there. So if you've got feedback about the session or want to discuss the project further, so if you've got questions or thoughts, please get in touch. We will be in touch over the coming days with answers to your questions and links to rewatch this session recording if you're super keen, or if you'd like to pass it on to people that you know that were unable to join us today. Thanks again from myself and all of our staff. Tēnā koutou katoa.